Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. The Qing Dynasty, as the last feudal dynasty in Chinese history, experienced nearly 3 centuries of rise and fall. Initially known as the Later Qing, it lasted a total of 296 years, during which 12 emperors reigned from the founding of the nation by Nurhaci. After Hong Taiji changed the name to Qing, it lasted 276 years. From the entry of Qing troops into Shanhaiguan and the establishment of a national regime, it spanned 268 years. In 1912, the last emperor of the Qing, Puyi, signed an abdication edict, officially declaring the fall of the Qing dynasty. However, the life within the imperial court did not come to a complete end. The fates of the palace maids and eunuchs raised many reflections during this historical turning point. Here, we will explore how the palace maids who once served the royal family in the Forbidden City faced the ensuing changes in their lives after the dynasty's collapse, analyze their differing outcomes, and discuss the social context reflected in these phenomena. According to relevant historians, despite the Qing dynasty announcing its demise in 1912, due to the limited strength of the southern rebel forces, a compromise was reached between the Qing emperor and the then Republican government, resulting in the establishment of the conditions for the Qing court's favor. Under these conditions, Puyi was still able to reside in the Forbidden City, enjoying the title of emperor and some powers. The palace maids and eunuchs were not dismissed, and the Republican government allocated 4 million yuan monthly to support the royal family's living expenses. All of this allowed the operation of the Qing court to continue in form. However, in 1924, the warlord Feng Yuxiang entered Beijing. Historical records show that Feng Yuxiang, originally named Feng Jishan and also known as Feng Yuxiang, was nicknamed the Commoner General. He was born in Qing County, Hebei, and grew up in Hebei and Baoding. During the Republic of China, he became the commander of the Northwest Army and the highest military and political leader. Feng grew up in a military camp. At the age of 16, he enlisted and joined the new army formed by Yuan Shikai, later being promoted to a captain. During the Xinhai Revolution, he led his troops to participate in the Guangxu uprising. After the establishment of the Republic, he participated in suppressing the Bailang uprising. During the Northern Expedition, he led his troops to participate in the campaign, and in October 1924, Feng Yuxiang initiated a coup in Beijing, overthrowing the government of the Zhili clique led by Cao Kun. He died in the Black Sea on September 1, 1948. Feng Yuxiang changed the conditions for the Qing court's favor, significantly reducing the subsidies to the royal family and even expelling Puyi from the Forbidden City. From then on, the fates of the palace maids and eunuchs who once served in the court underwent significant changes. As the court structure gradually disintegrated, the choices and challenges faced by Qing dynasty palace maids became increasingly severe. The palace maids of the Qing dynasty primarily came from the 8 banners. They entered the palace through different paths. Some were selected to become consorts or female officials due to their prominent family backgrounds, while others came from ordinary backgrounds and served as attendants. Qing dynasty palace maids did not serve for life. They typically entered the palace at ages 12 to 13 and would receive severance pay and leave the palace between the ages of 23 to 30 to start new lives. This process of severance was not simple. The income obtained by the palace maids within the palace was relatively high, especially for those in higher-ranking positions, whose annual salaries could be comparable to that of a 5th-rank prefect. However, as the Qing dynasty fell, their fates began to diverge, resulting in 4 main outcomes. The first outcome involved marrying an honest man and living a simple life. Some Qing palace maids, after their severance, chose to marry ordinary people and lead a modest life. These maids typically had some savings, But due to societal prejudice against palace maids, especially during the late Qing and early Republic, many men were reluctant to marry them, fearing they might have had relationships with eunuchs. However, disregarding prejudices against the 8 banners, the palace maids in the Qing court had strong guarantees of their chastity in various respects during their service. Since the Xuanzhi emperor entered Shanhaiguan, out of concern for his descendants being infatuated with women, he established a family rule stating that only eunuchs could serve the emperor, prohibiting palace maids from doing so. Only the young emperor, married wet nurses, and nannies could attend to him, therefore, the palace maids mostly served the consorts in the harem. Thus, Qing emperors could not casually interact with palace maids or form special relationships with them. For a palace maid to become a consort, there were only 3 pathways: recommendations from the empress, the imperial concubine, or the internal affairs office. Moreover, if a palace maid was favored, a eunuch from the internal affairs office had to record it. Furthermore, palace maids could not roam freely within the palace. If they needed to leave the chamber of the consort they served, they had to go out in pairs, otherwise they would face severe punishment from the internal affairs office, aiming to prevent palace maids from having secret liaisons with guards. There were strict rules in the Qing court generally preventing male figures, such as the emperor and guards, from interacting with palace maids. In Puyi's autobiography, My First Half of Life, he recalled that palace maids had to go out in groups of 2 or more. At the age of 13, when he visited Empress Dowager Cixi, all the palace maids withdrew once he entered, leaving only the old wet nurse. This illustrates the strict measures in the Qing court regarding interactions between genders, even he was not exempt. During the Qing dynasty, neither the emperor or the guards were allowed to have contact with the palace maids, and the maids did not share meals with the eunuchs. This was rooted in their differing backgrounds. Many eunuchs came from poor families and had no other options, while the palace maids were all daughters of the 8 banners, born into privilege and looked down upon associating with eunuchs. Moreover, palace maids had a time limit for leaving the palace, and with a glimmer of hope for the future, they naturally wouldn't risk their reputations by sharing meals with eunuchs. Thus, after leaving the palace, maids often cherished their image and reputation even more, opting to find a trustworthy partner and lead a peaceful life. On the other hand, some palace maids chose to live alone, having saved enough money to sustain themselves. These maids, often older or lacking suitable marriage prospects, faced the prospect of solitude in their later years. Although they had accumulated some wealth during their time in the palace, the absence of suitable partners meant they ultimately used their savings for retirement. In the Qing dynasty, palace maids generally earned good incomes and could accumulate wealth through their service to the royal family. However, after losing their court lifestyle, many felt lonely. And as they aged, societal acceptance of them gradually diminished. Despite their relatively affluent lives, the long-term loneliness and social exclusion placed immense pressure on them mentally. Once glorious palace maids now faced the twilight of their lives in solitude. Additionally, some palace maids turned to selling their bodies, falling into a life of degradation. This group, lacking savings, life skills, or suitable marriage options, became courtesans. In a society rife with prejudice against them, many women who once lived in the palace chose to survive by selling their bodies. They tried to leverage their status as royal maids to find a place in a new environment. However, this path was not sustainable. Many lost themselves in a life of degradation, leading to tragic fates. This phenomenon reflects the oppression and prejudice women faced, revealing the deep impact of social turmoil during the late Qing and early Republic of China on women's lives. Another group of palace maids returned to their hometowns or served as domestic workers for wealthy families. With some savings, they could secure better living conditions at home. However, in a society that favored men over women, Some maid savings could be confiscated by their families, resulting in them becoming domestic servants or being sold into other households. Such situations often placed former palace maids in even more complex predicaments, especially amid family discord and economic pressures, leading to uncertain futures. Historians have commented that although the fates of palace maids after the fall of the Qing varied, they all reflected the sadness and helplessness of an era. Their former glory in the palace made them the center of attention. But with the dynasty's collapse, that glory became unattainable. Societal prejudice against them, the oppression of women, and economic and familial pressures intertwined to shape their complex destinies. In the long course of history, the stories of palace maids serve as microcosms of individual fates, reflecting the upheaval and changes of the late Qing and early Republic of China. This history deepens our understanding of the fragility and resilience of women amid social transformation, as well as their arduous journeys in seeking survival in adversity. This is the History and Culture channel. Liking and subscribing are the greatest help and support to us. Thank you everyone and see you in the next time.